and welcome to Daily English Podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Emily. We're so happy you're joining us today for another episode.
Absolutely. You know, Emily, I was reading a quote earlier that said, "The secret of getting ahead is getting started." But for so many of us, beginning something new feels almost impossible.
Oh, I totally agree, David. Listeners, have you ever wanted to start something? Maybe learn English, play an instrument, or start a new job, but found it really hard just to take the first step?
That's what today's episode is all about. Why beginning is so hard. We'll explore why it's tough to start new things and how we can make it easier. We'll share stories, tips, and lots of real-life examples.
Plus, we'll talk about mistakes people make, what stops us from starting, and how starting can sometimes be the best part, even if it feels scary.
So, whether you're starting your English journey or thinking about another new challenge, this episode is for you.
David, let's kick things off. Why do you think beginnings are so hard?
Great question, Emily. For me, I think beginnings are hard because they're full of the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen, you might be afraid of making mistakes, and it just feels uncomfortable.
Yes. I remember when I first started learning Spanish, I felt so nervous. I thought, what if I say the wrong thing? What if people laugh at me? It almost stopped me from even trying.
Exactly. I had a similar experience when I started my first job. I was terrified of the new environment, new people, new responsibilities. I didn't sleep well the night before my first day.
I bet a lot of our listeners can relate to that, David. And you know what? I think it's totally normal to feel this way. If you feel nervous or unsure when you begin something new, you're not alone.
Absolutely. So let's break it down. Why is beginning something new, like learning English, starting a hobby, or moving to a new city, so difficult?
Well, I think the first reason is fear. Fear of failure is a big one. We worry that we won't be good enough or that we'll embarrass ourselves.
That's so true. Sometimes we're our own biggest critics. We imagine all the things that could go wrong, and it stops us from even starting.
Another reason is not knowing where to start. Sometimes a big goal just seems too big. Like, if you want to learn English, you might think, there's so much to learn, where should I begin?
Yes, it's like standing at the bottom of a tall mountain. You look up and it seems impossible to climb. But if you take just one step, you're already on your way.
That's a great image, David. I love that. Just one step. Hey, listeners, think about something you want to start. What's one small step you could take today?
Give yourself a moment to think. Maybe it's writing one sentence in English, or saying hello to someone in class, or even just opening a book to page 1.
It doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes we think we need to know everything before we start, but that's just not true.
Actually, I think perfectionism can be a real problem. We wait and wait for the perfect time or the perfect conditions, but that perfect moment almost never comes.
Exactly. Sometimes you just have to jump in. I remember when we started this podcast, I was worried about my voice, my accent, and making mistakes, but now I'm so glad we just started.
Same here. Our first episode wasn't perfect, but we learned so much by just doing it. Listeners, have you ever started something and felt nervous but later realized it was worth it?
Let's talk about some more reasons why beginnings are tough. What about habits, David?
Oh, habits are huge. We get comfortable with our routines. Starting something new means changing what we usually do, and our brains don't like change.
Yeah, have you ever tried to wake up early after a long holiday? It's really hard, right? Your body says, no, go back to sleep.
Haha, yes. My alarm clock doesn't stand a chance on Monday mornings.
So changing habits takes effort. But once you start, it gets easier. Like muscles getting stronger with exercise.
Good point. And here's another reason. Lack of motivation. Sometimes we want the result, but we don't feel excited to start the work.
That's true. Sometimes the idea of speaking perfect English is exciting, but actually doing daily practice? Not so much.
So what can we do? Well, breaking big tasks into small, easy steps really helps.
Yes. For example, instead of saying, I want to be fluent in English, you can say, Today I'll learn 5 new words. That feels much easier.
And celebrate small wins. Every step counts. Even listening to this podcast is a positive step.
Absolutely. Listeners, give yourself a pat on the back. You're learning right now.
Let's talk about some common mistakes people make when trying to begin something new.
One mistake is comparing yourself to others. You might see someone who's really good and think, I'll never be like that.
But remember, everyone starts as a beginner. Even the best speakers, athletes, or musicians began at zero.
Exactly. And sometimes we forget that we only see people's successes. We don't see all the hard work and mistakes they made.
Another mistake is giving up too soon. The first day or week might be tough, but it gets better if you keep going.
Yes, it's like learning to ride a bike. You fall a few times, but then you start to balance, and soon you're riding with no hands. Well, maybe not right away.
Haha, yeah, please keep your hands on the handlebars, everyone.
Another thing is waiting for the perfect time. There's never a perfect time. Sometimes you just have to start where you are.
So true. If you keep waiting, you might wait forever.
Let's talk about some advantages of beginning, even when it's hard.
Well, when you begin, you open the door to new experiences. You learn, grow, and sometimes you even surprise yourself.
Yes. When I started running, I thought I could never run more than a few minutes, but after a few weeks, I could run a whole mile without stopping. I felt so proud.
That's awesome, Emily. And I think learning something new can make life more interesting. It keeps things fresh.
And even if you're not perfect at first, you're making progress. That feeling of progress is really motivating.
Let's talk about some challenges you might face when starting and how to overcome them.
Okay, challenge number 1, feeling overwhelmed. If you have too much to do, break it down into smaller parts.
Yes, for example, if you want to read a book in English, read one page at a time, or even one paragraph.
Challenge number 2, fear of making mistakes. Remember, mistakes are how you learn. Don't be afraid to try.
Absolutely. When I learned to cook, I burned a lot of toast before I made the perfect one.
Haha, I've burned more than toast, David. My first cake was so bad my dog wouldn't even eat it.
Oh no. Well, that's a good sign to keep practicing.
Another challenge, lack of support. Sometimes you might feel alone, but remember there are lots of people like us and all our listeners who are starting something new too.
Yes. Join a community, find a study buddy, or listen to podcasts like this one. You're not alone.
Let's talk about some benefits of starting, even if it's hard.
One big benefit is confidence. Every small step you take gives you more confidence.
Another benefit is meeting new people. When you start a new class or hobby, you can make new friends.
Also, you start to see the world differently. Learning English, for example, opens up movies, music, and conversations you wouldn't have had before.
That's so true. When I first watched a movie in English and understood it, I felt like a superhero.
Haha, I know that feeling. It's like unlocking a new level in a game.
I want to talk about some cultural differences too. In some cultures, people are taught to always be perfect before starting. In others, it's okay to learn as you go.
That's a great point. In English-speaking countries, people often say, practice makes perfect. It's normal and even expected to make mistakes at the beginning.
Yes, it's okay to be a beginner. In fact, people usually admire someone who tries something new.
Let's do a quick reflection. Listeners, can you think of a time when you started something, even though it was hard? How did it feel? What helped you?
Imagine you're about to walk into your first English class. Your heart is beating fast. You're nervous, but you go in anyway. That's courage.
That's right. And every time you take a step, it gets a little bit easier.
Let's give our listeners a mini challenge. This week, try starting something new, no matter how small. Maybe write a sentence in English, say hello to someone new, or try a new food.
And if you feel nervous, remember, everyone feels that way at the beginning. You're not alone.
Let's highlight some vocabulary from today's episode.
Good idea. First word, perfectionism. This means wanting everything to be perfect before you start. For example, my perfectionism makes it hard to begin my homework.
Next word, overwhelmed. If you feel overwhelmed, you feel like there's too much to do. For example, I felt overwhelmed by all the words I had to learn.
Another one, motivation. This is your reason or energy to do something. For example, I lost my motivation to study after a long day.
Here's one, routine. A routine is something you do regularly, often every day. For example, my morning routine includes listening to this podcast.
And support. Support means help from others. For example, my friends give me support when I feel nervous about speaking English.
Let's do one more. Confidence. Confidence is believing in yourself. For example, after practicing, I have more confidence to speak English.
Great vocabulary, Emily. And listeners, remember, these words come up a lot when talking about starting new things.
And a fun fact, the word motivation comes from the Latin word movere, which means to move. So motivation is what moves you to start.
That's really cool. So when you find your motivation, you're ready to move forward.
Let's quickly review what we talked about today.
We explored why beginnings are hard, fear, habits, motivation, and more. We shared tips, personal stories, and examples, and we learned that starting is the most important step.
And remember, it's okay to be a beginner. Mistakes are normal, and every step you take is progress.
Here's my final thought. If you wait for the perfect moment, you might never start. Begin today, even if it's a small step.
And I'll add, be kind to yourself. Celebrate every step, and remember, you're doing something amazing.
Thank you so much for joining us on Daily English Podcast. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or leave us a comment.
We can't wait to talk with you again next time. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and don't be afraid to begin.
Bye, everyone, and have a great day.
Bye. See you next time.